Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Paranormal Rangers. Well, as you can see, the Paranormal Rangers is one. And we have Bill Skywalker. So, Bill, just to let you know, I think Jonathan is trying to join us, and he's going to be on a few minutes. Okay. He's running late, is what he said. That was his text to me. And Stan is again on travel. So we're kind of dealing with some interesting things right now in the universe and the world. And it's been very interesting. I just had, I imagine if I lost my storm door. And luckily I got it before it could break the glass. So that's what we've been dealing with in our lives. What about yourself today?
The same thing. I'm actually preparing for a little wind myself. We're expecting 60-mile-per-hour winds in a couple hours here in the Hudson Valley. So, wow. We're about to get it too. But I like what the topic tonight. I hope that John comes here. I think it was John that came up with this idea for tonight, right?
Yeah, it was. And when we spoke about it, he said, let's make it simple. And I don't know if the subject matter is always simple. I don't know if, the topics that we come up with are simple, but it is of interest of us to come up with these topics. We want to know ourselves and share with the audience of some of the experiences that we've had dealing with dimensional pathways and gateways. And go ahead.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think when you're talking about interdimensional, or you want to call them portals, whatever you want to put a name to it, I think a lot of the experiences that people have, and they say it's paranormal in nature, well, what exactly are we dealing with? Is it something overlapping into our dimension? Mm-hmm. I think that is probably what's happening, because I have stuff that goes on in this house, and of course it's an older house. But there's some things that are just unexplainable. It's like, what the heck is going on? I don't know if it's spiritual in nature. I don't know if it's interdimensional in nature, but it seems to me, just my own opinion, that maybe it's more interdimensional, and we're starting to learn a lot more about it, quantum physics, mechanics, etc. So if I was trending to a specific theory, even when it comes to extraterrestrials, I still am leaning now to the interdimensional aspect. What about you?
Yeah. I think realities we're intertwined with past, present, and future. I think sometimes those cross over. I think our realities today, we know right now in the present that I'm doing a show with Bill Skywatcher, and we're having this moment, but in a few seconds, if some anomaly happened, you were saying, hey, Michelle, your internet going in and out, that if people weren't familiar with the internet, they'd be going, what is the internet? And from another reality who had this technology, what are you talking about? That sometimes those are realities that we live into. I caught a movie today. It was, I've been a little bit under the weather, with Mark Harmon. It was an old YouTube movie about how he went back to 1869. And I thought that was apropos to this topic we're talking today. And that just happened to come on. And, where he had one of these time clocks, these little pocket watches he could stuff in there. And he would catch a train every morning to go to his work. He was an architect and a cartoonist with there's our John guy.
Oh, there he is.
So it was interdimensional, where he was going back from his reality in the 1990s to our timeline, 1869. And, his life wasn't quite peaceful in the moment he was living, and he wanted simplicity. So I'm not going to give the plot of the movie. Go watch it. And it's like, A Time to Remember. I think that's what it was called. But those are kind of some of the realities of interdimensional travel pathways And I thought it was really, really coincidental that would come on while I was, resting today. Isn't that?
That is. Before I go, and I'm really curious because I know I want to definitely hear John and yourself's take on this. But sometimes, even in a lucid dream, it's like, I know this isn't my current life, but is this my life in another existence?
Dream states. Mm-hmm.
But do you guys ever get that? It's like, this is you, but it's like you living in a different life, in a different, I won't even say time, but it just doesn't make sense because it's like things are totally different in this timeline than it is in reality. So am I tapping into I'm just being out there. Is this my other self in another dimension or in another existence, a parallel universe? I don't know, but it is kind of odd when you have those type of dreams and you say to yourself, this doesn't even make sense. I don't know these people. I don't know where I am. It's just one of those things. So I'm really curious to see what both of you discussed tonight on this. So I'm sure Stanley's still on the road, and hopefully he'll be joining us next week. So Jonathan, always a pleasure to see you. And,
yeah, it's good seeing you.
And I'm going to sit back now and enjoy the show with both of you. So I'll see you guys later.
Thanks, Bill.
All right.
Appreciate you. Hi, John.
Yeah, I got stuck in traffic. They had a lot of county officers on the road, and everybody slowed down, and we were just crawling. So,
wow.
Of course, I never speed. You know how that goes.
Yeah. You're just kind of taking it methodically and conscientious about your environment. Yeah, I know. Well, it's great to have you on the show. We were talking about how dimensional pathways and gateways, and I was talking about a movie that I'm a little bit under the weather today, and so we were getting 65-mile winds, and my storm door fell off.
Oh no!
Luckily, I caught it before it could go and break the glass, but it didn't, so I saved the day. But
did you yell Annie M? Annie M? It's a twister.
Yeah, I wanted to have. Where's Toto? Help me, Toto. But no, Bill's actually preparing for gusty winds like that, and up there at the Hudson area where he lives. So we were kind of talking about how we live in some really interesting times, but the weather is starting to appear on us. But this show happened to be, you heard a little bit as you came in about interdimensional time travel. And Mark Harmon started in that show. So if anybody wants to hear it, but it was apropos because I was just resting. All of a sudden that came on and I thought, oh, that's interesting. To what our talk, So, and then the weather may be playing into the internet stuff. So are you okay over there?
Yeah, I'm okay over here, but you just froze up there for a second. Then
and it might be because of the high winds here. We're having some high winds. We're getting a storm coming in or something's happening. So if I bug out, I'll come back in.
Right.
But anyway, so we're having that was a really interesting question that Bill asked. So if you want to share something, your thoughts about dimensional pathways and gateways, stories that have happened to you. I know that I have a few.
Well, the dream thing that Bill was talking about, it happens. And what my best take on it is, and I'm not the expert definitely on this, but I've had a lot of dreams where things have happened, and then you get this feeling of deja vu later on, and you go, "Hey, I've dreamed this, and I know exactly what's going to happen," and you start just viewing it. It's almost like it happens, and you go, "Oh, I want to watch this play out." And see how far it'll go, how far it'll stay, because sometimes it's just a flash and you go, I remember this, but I don't remember anything else. And to me, it's kind of like exercising your mind. You have to exercise it in order for it to work. And if you don't, if you just accept this little flash and that's it, then you go, well, that was weird. And that's all it is. But if you start, just like your dreams, if you keep a journal,
isn't it?
you're freezing up again. But if you keep a journal, if you keep a journal and you record what your dreams were that night, pretty soon you'll start to remember them in more detail. So
log on your dreams.
I don't keep a log on, but I do try to remember them. As soon as I wake up, I'll go back and say, okay, what did I dream? And I'll be able to capture a few details. And you just have to keep exercising it to get that part of it. So what Bill's talking about is that you can dream almost in an alternate reality. And sometimes they say that your subconscious is communicating with you. And, it's giving you solutions to issues that you might have or what's on your mind. And in some cases, it could be so earth-shattering. I call them visions, when you're sleeping, because all of a sudden what you dreamed about is just so momentous that you can't forget it. And you go, and sometimes it's about loved ones, sometimes it's about situations. And so that dream state that we have, a lot of it is subconscious, that's exercising while you're asleep. And then you have another phenomenon, this phenomenon of falling. And I know a lot of people have that. And that falling feeling happens, and it's actually there to protect you in a way. So you don't do something, it basically tries to wake you up, in other words, and let you know, especially if you're a sleepwalker, before you tumble down those stairs in the house or something else, or walk out the front door, it makes you spaz out and realize that something's wrong and keep you from injuring yourself.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There is a movie called Inception out there, one with Leonardo DiCaprio. And I don't know if you ever had those states where you're in a dimensional pathway and then you thinking that you're just dreaming, but you're actually in another dream that's layered on top of the dream that you're having. I don't know if you've ever experienced one of those, because I think
not to my knowledge. I think I would have remembered if I had a dream within a dream.
Yeah, I've had that a couple of times in my life where I felt like I was flying. Flying is another classic pattern that people have, being able to fly. If you don't mind me sharing this one story, I was with a guy who was in his 90s, and he was up in the Uinta Basin. And I may have talked about this before. And he told me he wrote a book on the Skinwalker Ranch, and he was famous, him and Dr. I think it was Dr. Kellner, Colin Kellner, and they had written a book about, the ranch and some of the things that happened and the visitations they had. But he told me on the side, he says, you know what, you're going to have an experience where they're going to come and take you to a planet. But it came in the form of a dream. And I was actually taken to this planet. It's kind of humorous. It was a humorous story because it was a water planet and I was in somebody else's body. And the style of clothing was the 1960s, the pastel colors. and I was actually in somebody else's body. And in this dream state, I wasn't supposed to be there because I was human, and these people were not human. They were of a different species. But I got found out. And so the chase went on. So they were trying to get me kicked off the planet. So the individual who had can't come to get me and show me the water planet, everything existed, their housing, everything existed on top of the water where it levitated. Everything levitated upon the water, but everything was water-based. And I finally got to a harbor to get on a special aircraft of some sort. And I was told, do not look behind me. And I didn't. And all of a sudden, it's like some water planet authorities came and were trying to capture me because they knew I was violating one of their principles there, I guess, on their planet. Like they knew I was inside somebody else's body. But I remember looking down at my clothing and what I was wearing, and the hair was bouffanted, like the 1960s, how they used to wrap their hair and then create the beehive look. That's what I looked at myself. And I remember giggling in my dream, saying, oh my gosh, would never dress like this in that type of clothing. And as soon as I got off the planet and got back into the aircraft, and I can't even describe the aircraft, I woke up and woke out of this dream. So there you go. Is that a dimensional dream, or was I really taken somewhere else? Who's to know?
Yeah, right. Who knows? It's an area of study that is just in its infancy. We've been looking at all this idea of string theory and dimensions. String theory posits that there could be 10 to 12 dimensions, or there could be an infinite number of dimensions. And the idea that has been said was that you could be living different lives in each of these dimensions. Because of the choices that you make, you could be actually doing something completely different, maybe a different path in your life, a different marriage, different, whatever. Yeah. For every type of choice you could make, you could go the other direction. And so you would have to have infinite lives to do that.
Right.
I have no idea how that would work. We see it a lot in Rick and Morty now, going from dimension to dimension.
Right.
But it's so the idea is there. And when Stan and I first started doing investigations, we were looking for something that would show us why these things were all happening. Why is there UFOs? Why is Bigfoot here and then not here? Why are hauntings happening? And we started tying it in with this idea of a multiverse. And we started talking about that. When we first started talking in 2011, nobody was really talking about it. And I know we weren't the first ones, but we were one of the first that came out and spoke openly about that. And now you turn on the TV and every station and cartoon has something about the multi-dimensions.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really good friends with Stan Lee, and it was really interesting that he would have the knowledge, and he put it in an entertainment form. And today we have the Marvel characters, and Doctor Who is a perfect example of what you're talking about. Multidimensional being, multiverse, type of universe. And can you imagine living a different life? Maybe you're not a paranormal ranger. Maybe you were an alien on some other planet, kind of mirroring who you are. Maybe you we're a great leader. We just don't know. And then we have these dreams, like subconsciously, where we may be under stress. Or I had talked with a friend. I called a friend because I had a dream, and and it was pretty profound. And I don't have dreams about other people most times. And I called them and I said, hey, we were on snowmobiles on a snow planet. And I looked at you and I said, what are you doing here?
Uh-huh.
And they thought that was pretty entertaining, like maybe we knew each other in another snow planet or somewhere else, you just, those kind of dreams, they're kind of bizarre, I guess. Are they gateways? Is this the way our mind deals with some of those gateways?
Well, we do know that our vision is extremely limited.
Right.
We don't see into the infrared on one side. We don't see in the X-ray spectrum on the other side. And when you see those beautiful, beautiful color pictures of the universe and the solar system and all that, those are enhanced using infrared images.
Right.
So they don't look like that in real life, but they actually add that color in the infrared so that we can actually see things that are. And I found this out. I got a new camera. It looks like a binoculars, a real cheap one, but it shoots. It looks in the infrared, and I noticed that even though I could not see satellites in it, in the clouds, in my night vision, because the clouds are blocking the light, with the infrared, I could see through the cloud and see the satellites.
Right.
So it was kind of a cool thought that I had. We just don't have the vision for it. And we think in terms of this dimensional gates or dimensions as walls, that they're all side by side as you go along. I tend to think that they're more like clouds, where they're not really linear. They're not, straight up and down, and you don't go through a wall, but they're kind of like, you see a cloud mesh with each other and they go through. And so there's all these possibilities that little openings could appear randomly. And, that's why we think that dimensions were how the Navajo came to be, that they came through several different dimensions and ended up in this dimension. And in two cases, they described going through a hole in the sky.
Right.
One of them, they had to put something up there, a construct of something to get up through the hole. And as a people, they went through that hole and they entered into this world that they call the shining world. So we started looking at that and thinking, what if they're actually being literal? It's not a myth or a fable. What if what they're saying actually happened?
Well, it's really interesting that you would bring that hole up. It's really interesting on Homestead 2. There always was a light, and I should have put a picture on here, but it beams down onto Homestead 2 on top of the hill there, up there by Skinwalker Ranch, and I have a photo of it. And I had interviewed one of the Native Americans up there with the healthcare department. And she says, I need to tell you something. She says, every time we have the bear dance, there's a certain song that we sing. And I just want you to know, and this was early on when I started on that project. And she said, when we play this particular song at the bear dance, that white beam comes down. And she says, we believe that that's creation, that the source is beaming down some of our ancestors, which is really interesting, isn't it?
Oh, sure. There are a lot of tribes that have ceremonies that are not open to the public.
No.
And in these ceremonies, they have some really strange things that'll happen. I've heard of some ceremonies where Bigfoot shows up and, sits down on the end. And, people are going, they notice it, but they don't want to say anything. They just sit there and go, that's kind of nice, I guess. But there's lots of things that go on that we just don't know about today.
Well, I want to talk about a really interesting kind of change the subject a little bit about animal dimensions. So I caught a video on TikTok where there was a crocodile who bit into the rear end of a dog. It was just a dog, and the dog wasn't able to turn and protect itself with its canine teeth and was trying to get away. Well, here comes this monkey with the big old stick and hits the snout of the crocodile, and the crocodile let go because they hold on, they'll roll and they'll kill that dog. And that monkey grabbed that dog and literally put his arms around him and got him away from the crocodile and protected it. That's like an interesting dimension. I mean, wow. The animal world, they sense things about themselves, and to protect another animal of not their species was quite intriguing to me.
Yeah, was it? I'm trying to think of that older guy that was with the military for a long time. I want to say John Barrows, but he was saying that he was with a group of special forces, and they went up into Chaco Canyon in the late 60s or early 70s. And according to him, when I was conversing with him, he said that there was a ripple in the sky, and the star field, you could see it distort. And as he was watching, he said a hole opened up and stayed open. This was down Chaco Canyon, away from Pueblo Bonito. And he says that hole stayed open for 15 to 20 minutes and then closed up. And so they reported their findings. He said it happened about 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was very clear of what had happened with that. And so, I mentioned this to those of you that know David Pilates, who does the Missing 411 series.
Right.
And he is also kind of believing now that a lot of these people may have disappeared by walking into portals unknowingly and have disappeared. There was one that he talked about where a hiker was lost in Mesa Verde.
Yeah.
Down where the ruins were. And right after that, they looked and looked and they searched and they couldn't find anything. The next day, some other people came to the park for a meeting, and below them, they heard somebody calling for help. And they went to the rangers and they said, "Hey, there's somebody down there calling for help." And they went down there with their search team thinking it was the guy from the day before, and they never found him. So they think that he might have popped into a different dimension. And it's the only explanation that kind of fits.
That the portal system is in place and that we find gateways, and the Egyptians believed a lot of that too. There's a lot of
if they're like clouds, they're not going to be static entryways. They're going to be here, they're going to be there, they're going to open, they're going to close. Some of them are going to be 20 feet up in the air. Some of them may be underground. We just don't know. We can't, our little brains can't conceive of that kind of stuff accurately.
Well, you remember me sharing the story, during the Halloween week about when I went camping, and then I saw that might have been, it had to do with time. That
Right.
cloud mass that came in like a fog, but then it looked like taffy and it was distorting itself. A friend of mine says, you were supposed to walk through that. And I go, yeah, but I didn't want to disappear. I didn't want to go to another dimension. So if my other girlfriend says, do not, because she's got some abilities, and she says, don't, just stand here, just stand here. And that was really a great experience. I didn't feel anything negative. I just thought, this is really neat. And I really wanted to go and touch it. And, she was a little bit freaked out about it. And she says, no, don't do that. And she goes, don't even take photos, because I was about to grab my camera. So I'm thinking, and you had called me and you had said something about timelines, like you had spoken with somebody about timelines and dimensions and things like that prior to that. And my mind was so on the experience. So my conversation with you is like, I identified, I went, yeah, time is not linear, is what you said. It is.
Yeah, it's not linear, it's circular.
It's circular. And you said that to me, and I was a little bit, and then some time stuff started to happen with me and my friend.
Yeah, if it's linear, then it goes from point A to point B.
Exactly.
If it's circular, it's kind of like an old record that is, the needle is on there, and every now and then it can skip.
Yep.
And just like the old Monty Python, the record stuck, the record stuck, the record stuck. You just get that, either something that repeats or it goes to a different track and you see something different.
Right. So, John, do you have any stories involving time loss or gateways that you experienced, or no?
Well, for a lot of years, what I experienced was this time loss, and they usually show up as 30-minute loss of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be working all hours. My days were averaging 14 to 16 hours a day of work. Mm-hmm. And I was traveling 125 miles one way to get to work. So I would wait until the traffic all died down at 5 and leave at 6:30 or so and come home. But on the way, I was on call. Being the law enforcement guy that I was, and being a licensed EMT, there was always something going on, a medical emergency, an accident, man with a weapon, something going on. So I would divert, and then I'd get home late. And many times I'd be on my way home, and I'd pass a known location. And I'd think, okay, I've got 5 miles to go, or I got 8 miles to go. So I should be home, within 10 minutes.
Right.
And then you drive and you drive and you drive and you drive, and it seems like it just goes and goes. And you start thinking, what the heck, And then you pass the same location again that you saw.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize, I'm still 5 minutes or 8 minutes away. What the heck? And then you start, then you look at your time and you find out, 30 minutes have elapsed since the last time you looked at it, but you haven't gone anywhere. And it was getting me upset. I won't say what I said, because we'd get banned from the platform, but I was pretty upset about it. And sometime after that, I said, you know what, I'm gonna get me a dash cam, right? And I'm gonna put it in the front of the vehicle. And as soon as I did, all that missing time experiences stopped. And so just recently, or last year, I bought a new dash cam that runs in 4K. And and then the back has a back camera that runs in 1080p. And just so you guys out there know, I got it on eBay for like $75. So they're not that expensive anymore. And ever since I got it, no more missing time, no more UFO sightings like I used to have all the time before. And I'm actually good with that. I'm happy.
You got out of the realm of your gateway there. Maybe you were producing the gateway. So, there's that aspect of it too. I was thinking about a story and I may have mentioned this before, that there was a guy up in Vernal that he's gone now. He's passed on. And he told me of a story about a Navajo down in Shiprock that went through a gateway, and he went through, came back, packed all his stuff, took his family, his wife, maybe a child or something, and they went into the Shiprock. Now there's that legend that behind the Shiprock rock, there is a gateway. And
it wouldn't surprise me in the least. There's so many sacred places on our reservation. You just can't begin to even count them, but you don't talk about their locations because you don't want a lot of people showing up. Yeah, I've heard about places like that. We have places on Navajo that'll equal what's happening at Skinwalker Ranch.
right.
We just don't advertise it. We don't talk about it, but local people know not to go to those places
because they're considered sacred. So here's what's really interesting. A friend of mine gave me a book, and it was by Louis Lamar, and it was called Haunted Mesa. And I started to read it from the get-go. And every time I would read that book, my grandmother would be saying, "Put it down. You're not supposed to read this." Well, my grandmother passed in the 80s. And every time I would pick up that book and I was intrigued by it, I could never finish that book because my grandmother would come, "Nope, you don't need to know about that. No. And now that's a little bit bizarre. So that is a dimensional pathway for somebody to come through the gateway and tell you not to read a certain book.
Well, I'm of the opinion, and this is just my take on it, after years and years of living out here and working with different people, I'm of the opinion that the old people that were here prior to 1864, and in the case of the Hopi and some of the other Pueblos before 1600, when they had contact with the Spanish, they knew how to use dimensional travel.
Exactly.
And the reason I say this is that when you look at this idea, when the Spanish came in 1600, right away they brought their own priests, and they forced tribes to adopt Christianity.
Exactly.
And when I say forced, you die or you join. That's forced. I'm not talking about, we're just going to have a bingo rally and come over here and agree with us. They were like, we're going to cut your head off if you don't join us. And so that later on, they had the Pueblo Rebellion and got rid of them for about 80 years. But during that time, a lot of the priests that the different Pueblos had were put to death automatically because they represented a competing religion. And you can't have that when you're trying to push your own religion.
Right.
So I really think that those priests had the knowledge of how to travel through these dimensions, and it was lost when they were all killed. Now, I ran into a woman that told me that her grandfather had told told them when he was a little boy that his father had told him, take this container, and I want you to run as fast as you can, exactly this direction, here.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, don't hesitate, just go and hold that container. And so the little boy took off, and he told him, he says, once you get there, fill that up with water and turn around and come back exactly the same way and do the same thing, run toward it. And as he ran, he said everything sped up like fast motion.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that even, you were passing deer and they weren't even reacting to you because you were moving so fast. And suddenly he was miles away at this watering location, filled the jug up and went back the other way, and in no time flat, he was back.
Mm-hmm.
So is that just a story, or did they have a way back then of using this dimension idea to travel in a very fast manner and speed up everything, to the point where you got back just the same way you went, and bring water back on top of that?
Because water's weight and it slows you down.
Right.
Right. Well, here's kind of a more of on the light side. So when we would go up to the Uinta Basin, my partner and I were in our separate cars and stuff, and sometimes I would be a little late, and I said, go ahead, just go, and we'll meet up at, the meeting point. And I would find myself sometimes getting there 30 minutes before they would. And he goes, how did you do that? You were like 30 minutes behind. I said, well, I time traveled. And it became a standing joke. But having said that, is like, yeah, how did I do that? Do we create, those dimensional portals for ourselves, even in even though we're not consciously doing it, maybe subconsciously, we do create that. We do have that ability within us. So
I really think we do.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been figured out yet. And, they might know about it already. Our government, sees stuff like this, but what do? They weaponize it.
Right.
And keep it secret.
Oh.
And so there's a lot of things out there. Oh, changing the subject just a little bit. I was with a friend of mine named Chuck, and he had worked at Lawrence Livermore, at Sandia, at Los Alamos, and on the missile programs and the radars and everything else. And he just offhand told me something that he had never really told anyone. He said when he was working at the labs, this was back in the 70s, after he had retired from the Navy, he was asked, can you develop a sensor that could differentiate, our cellular structure is carbon-based, and we have blood and platelets that move through the blood. So there's a certain biosignature there.
Right.
And they asked him, can you develop something that somebody would have to walk through, that if those platelets and things don't show up, an alarm will go off?
Interesting.
And he says he didn't even think about it. He said, oh, yeah, I can do that. And he worked on it and came up with a machine that would do that. And he says years and years later, when he got interested in the paranormal stuff, he says he thought back and thought, that was a really weird request to have a biometric scanner that would only allow humans to go through.
That would be an interesting topic to have him on the show. That would be very interesting. Yeah, it's but at the time he probably just from his scientific mind said, yeah, sure, I can engineer something like that, but not just for the human race.
Yeah. So, I don't know what kind of,
Dimensional
like
beings.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or,
I know where you're going with that.
yeah, something alien.
Yeah.
That-
Yeah.
But
Maybe,
that possibly looked like us enough that they could walk through a checkpoint and not be questioned.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I have friends in the industry, the, aerotech space industry that have talked about that too. People who are human, but they also have other species in them.
Yeah.
That itself is a topic, right?
Right. So there's a lot going on, and all we're seeing is tiny little tidbits of information every now and then that pop out, and then we go, wait a minute, and imagine that he was asked to make that in the early 70s. So what the heck.
So, John, are you a hybrid or are you a native? You could, because we call her.
Well, my great grandmother was a hybrid princess. So
That's right. Exactly. Well, I just had a random thought that, we call ourselves the star people. A lot of nations, native nations call them the star people. They refer to them in their religion and their ceremonies and what traditions. They call them the star people. And like you said, the whole opening up to be with our ancestors or the gods or the deities. Some tribes talk about the deities.
And how many tribes have multiple deities that they honor, and they have detailed descriptions of them? And
Yeah.
we look at it and say, oh, it's just mythology. They just made it up as part of their religion. But what if you look at all of this and take it in a literal sense?
That would be cool.
And say, yeah, they had an oral tradition, but they passed it down exactly. Mm-hmm. And what if those were actually depictions of higher beings that they met? In the case of Navajo and Hopi, that came to them to impart knowledge.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation here today, and we've shared some of our stories. We've shared stories of people that we've interviewed and people we know, great, brilliant minds out there who are working on technologies that, that normal people wouldn't consider anything but, a new technology. There are other things I know of people working on really, really interesting things right now in my life. But you think down the road, what is this for in the present moment? It could be something for the future. It could be for healing. It could be, we're talking about med beds, healing frequencies. We're talking about a lot of things that are occurring. Those are pathways and gateways to other things. It could be right here on the earth today.
And we talked about manifestation.
Yes.
And how to manifest things, for yourself or for your family or for other people, that it's an exercise of the mind.
Yeah. And even though I was joking with my partner, I was like, oh, I'm just time traveling, but I would find myself 30 minutes ahead on that time travel. So it could be a state of mind. It could be the way the body works with the elements, the principles. I don't even want to get into the to the principles of Christ because he knew how to manipulate the elements to create these miracles.
Right.
He understood. He understood. We don't understand. So that's why we always call it the phenomena. You know what I mean?
Well, we got to remember that, Doctor Who put it best. Time is a wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love these subjects. This is one of my favorite subjects because, I've had, and you've had experiences, but it's really interesting. Next week, we have a special guest going to be coming on the show. He's been on it before. I had some complications before when he was on, but he made me promise me that I'd be on and you guys be on. It's going to be John Burroughs again, and we are excited to have him on again. And everybody, please tune into that. We hope that Stan will be with us. I know Stan's out there promoting things with this book and doing other things. And John, it's great to always have you here with me, us being the Navajo Rangers. And our audience, we can't do it without you. And the subject matter is what you guys are asking for us to talk about. And there is some we just get to the tip of the sword. We really don't get that deep. We haven't even gotten that deep. One day, maybe we'll do a 2-hour show and pre-record that for an event. But please come back and join us again. Any last thoughts, John?
Oh, no. We're nothing without all of everybody out there that's watching and listening.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate with even the hiccups that we have with technology, windstorms, anything like that. You guys listen to us. We are normal people that have daily lives and we have schedules to keep. And some of us are working, some of us are doing other projects. But we love having you be here. We love, Bill, that he is producing and assisting us with our show. Please come back next week. We look forward to seeing everybody again. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.